Welcome to our second fall workshop titled Hacks to Help Women Maximize Income and Minimize Expenses. I'm Dr. Emily Durowski, Associate Director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project and the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. Dr. Susan Madsen, our director, is double booked with another event today. She may join us for the Q&A, but otherwise says hello to all of you joining us. This event furthers the mission of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, which is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. We serve Utah and its residents by 1, producing relevant, trustworthy, and applicable research, 2, creating and gathering valuable resources, and 3, convening trainings and events that inform, inspire, and ignite growth and change for all Utahns. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Utah Education Network, the John M. Huntsman School of Business, USU Extension, and Empowering Financial Wellness, which is also part of USU Extension, for making this event possible. I'm going to turn the time over to Angie Clevin, who is our statewide community outreach manager of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, and she will introduce our presenter.
Thanks, Emily. I'm excited to be here today with all of you and inside, and to be able to introduce our great presenter. Vincenza Vicari-Bentley is an accredited financial counselor and USU Extension Program Coordinator specializing in personal finance outreach education. Vincenza regularly contributes finance content to the Utah Money Moms blog, as well as the USU Extension Finance website. In her 7 years as a financial counselor and personal finance educator, she has contributed to numerous state award-winning materials and resources for teaching personal finance. Vincenza is a member of the Empowering Financial Wellness team that was awarded first place in 2022 from the Utah Extension Association of Family and Consumer Sciences for Innovative Program, as well as the Florence Hall Award, which is presented for an outstanding program for recognizing new concerns and interests of families and implementing programs that benefit them. So welcome, Vincenza. We're so excited to have you and appreciate your time. There will be time at the end of the workshop for questions from listeners, so submit your questions anytime in the chat or the Q&A box. All right, Vincenza, we'll turn the time over to you.
Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you see that? Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here and have this opportunity to talk to everybody today. And so what we're going to be talking about today is how can we strategize how we spend and still achieve our financial goals, even during these times of really high inflation. And so one way to be thinking about this is to develop new spending or tweaking some of our spending and saving habits so that we can still maximize our income and minimize our expenses. So today specifically, we're going to focus on some strategies, some practical strategies that we can implement during this time of this economic environment that we're in, so that we can all continue to strive toward achieving whatever our financial goals are. So this is our my presentation overview for today. So we're going to talk about specific strategies on how we can spend and be thinking about how we spend. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite tips to maximize your income. And then lastly, it's important that we talk about financial goals. That's what drives us. And I'm going to be sharing with you some ways to be thinking about how you can prioritize your roadmap. So just to kind of paint the picture here, some staggering statistics, especially here with being in the state of Utah. So prices today, if you can believe it, you're probably feeling it out there, 15% higher than if we compare it to January of 2021. And so due to this combination of higher inflation rates and higher average household spending, inflation is imposing the greatest monthly costs, specifically families in Utah. And we have that figure here, $925. And I think it's important to point out that this measurement refers to how much more the average household pays today to maintain the same standard of living that it had achieved in January of 2021. And so, where we are starting to ease out of the pandemic, and I don't know about you, but started to kind of rethink how I was going to spend my money. I hadn't really been able to do that for quite some time, and I wanted to do more with it. And then we're hit with inflation. So I kind of had to regroup and think about that. And it's just unfortunate that families in the West are facing the highest inflation rates compared to the rest of the US. So inflation is taking a toll on our mental health as well. And it's been affecting women more than men. And so here's just the comparison of what we're spending in Utah and nationally, how Utah's monthly household inflation costs have increased. And now here we talked about being stressed, and that money is a stressor for all Americans, but more often than not, it's the women that are worrying the most about it. In media and popular culture, women are often portrayed, the ones that are in the household are the shopaholics, they're buying the shoes and the clothes and the other luxuries that oftentimes will bust their family budget. While it is true that women do drive the majority of consumer spending in the household, the reality is that a lot of times they're carrying the emotional and the financial load of making sure that the home and the family run smoothly. When we combine this with what we just painted this picture with the state of our economy, and also keeping in mind that women are also facing the majority of student loan debt. And so that's what we were saying here. And it's also interesting to see that the demographic of women, younger women, say that they're just completely overwhelmed by stress, and money is a big part of that. So what can we do? How can we manage our stress about money? And so just here's some 3 takeaways. Take a breath when you find yourself in these negative thoughts. Try to imagine and plan the best case scenario. And today we're going to talk about some ways where you can do that. Control the controllables. That's one thing I like to think about. And research has shown that when we take action over aspects of our life that we can control, that's with our own personal control, we can feel more empowered, and that can help mitigate the stress. And so if we focus on what we can control and we put more of our energy in what we can control, that's a natural way to help curb anxiety. We can't control inflation per se, but we can control our own personal inflation rate. And often, we equate our financial situation with our worthiness. And that is what may be preventing us from taking positive actions when the worry and the anxiety about money becomes overwhelming. So let's try not to judge ourselves against what other people are doing. And so now I want to kind of have you think about something. If you would launch that first poll, I want you to think back to your last impulsive or perhaps unplanned purchase. Can be something big or small. How do you feel about it now? You can think back. Do you love it? That thing that you bought, do you like it? Did you need it? Is that why you purchased it? Or did you just want it? And I'd love to just see how that plays out. So we'll just wait, I guess, just a few more seconds and give folks the chance to answer the poll. I can share with you a recent purchase. There were some holiday items that went on sale. I'd been eyeing something and it went on sale 50%. And after I bought it, I thought, gosh, did I really love that? Or did I just like it? And there's nothing wrong with however it's categorized. It's just getting us thinking about. So let's see, it was pretty split evenly. About a quarter of all the respondents loved it, liked it, needed it, and wanted it. That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. So we're going to talk about strategizing our spending. A majority of Americans spend most of their money on the big 3. So we're talking about housing and transportation and food, and those are the things that have been hit hardest by inflation. So if you're able to cut back on any of those big three, that's where you're going to get the biggest savings. Spending less is the quick and easy solution, but of course there is a limit to how much we can frugal down. And so right now we may need to make some financial changes so that we don't fall into debt or fall further into debt to try to maintain our same standard of living. Again, we cannot control inflation, but we can definitely control what goes in and out of our pocketbooks. So I want to share with you these statistics. So this survey indicates that Americans are spending more on impulsive purchases today and now, more so than in the past 2 years. And while inflation is definitely impacting people's budgets across all of the essential shopping categories, interestingly, consumers are reporting an increase in the frequency of their impulsive purchases. And most of the time it's because they're taking advantage of a deal. Such a great deal, it was on sale. I wasn't planning on buying it, but I just didn't feel like I wanted to, fear of missing out. So how do we fight this? And so here's some strategies to be thinking about that. And that's why I asked you the question of, do I love it? Do I need it? Do I like it? Or do I want it? Try prioritizing the positive emotions tied to your long-term plan. So when you're making a decision about spending money, think about those things. And perhaps if you have some longer-term goals, it might help you with just the wanting to live in the moment of that short-term satisfaction of that impulsive spending. And so we're all probably trying to be mindful of our spending due to inflation. It doesn't, and it's not to say that you have to eliminate all of the fun, but maybe ask yourself this question or these questions. Do I need it? And we're talking about for the health and safety of myself, my family, like buying food, having housing. Do I love it? If money was no object, what would you do or do more of? Do you like it? In 3 to 6 months, how will you feel about it? Do you think you'll still feel that initial joy that maybe you felt when you initially purchased that? Or do you want it? Is it just an impulsive purchase that you know is just in the moment that's going to provide you temporary satisfaction? So when we remove financial limits, for example, thinking about what we're buying, we let ourselves think about more than just the day-to-day stuff. So like identifies what matters to you and wants is more a temporary satisfaction. And so when you learn to distinguish how you spend your money, you give yourself a way to define what living more of a life, what does that mean to you? Most people jump right to likes and wants. But when we spend more on what we need and what we love, you're living more in your life or of a life. And so this may not make you necessarily always make different spending decisions, but if you practice and you pause, you're creating this awareness and this mindfulness. I do this on a regular basis. When there's something I'm looking at and it's really cute, like, do I like it? Do I want it? Do I need it? What am I going to feel? It just helps me just stay focused on what's the goal. I do have fun money in my budget, but I like this just kind of, I've been practicing this for years. And it just, a lot of times I'm just able to eliminate and say, it's nice and it's cute, but it's not really going to get me where I want to go in all of the other financial goals that I might have. So something to be thinking about, just a more of a mindful spending strategy. So let's jump into some tips to now maximize our income. We talked about how maybe we can shift our mindset about spending, but now let's talk about some of my favorite tips about how to maximize your income. So if increasing income, like starting a job or getting a new job or getting a side hustle or changing jobs is not really in the cards for you in the moment, I want you to think about, I wanted to share with you some ideas where we can be a little bit more creative about how we can maximize our income. Even if you aren't the income earner in the household, these tips can be applied to anyone in the household that's earning money. And I want to share with you my 4 favorite tips. So the first one is adjusting your tax withholding. So think about it. Did you get a large tax refund last year? Last year, the average person in Utah, their refund was $2,700. And so according to the IRS, about 3/4 of taxpayers are guilty of over withholding. So remember, when you get a refund, that means what you've overpaid throughout the year, what was taken out of your paycheck. And so they're giving that back to you without any interest. Now, I don't know if you know, but in 2020, they rehauled the W-4, which is that withholding form that tells your employer how much money do you want to have taken out of your paycheck to go towards your tax bill. So if it's been a while since you've looked at that, or if you started a new job, you will fill out what's called the employee's withholding certificate, allowance certificate. It's called the W-4 form. So think about it. If it's been a while, your partner, your spouse, and they've been at their job and they haven't revamped that or relooked at that, you can adjust it. And it's one of those things that we can adjust at any time throughout the year to modify how much is being withheld from your paycheck. So especially if you've had big life changes, you got married, you had children, you got divorced, you got a second job. These are all things that would prompt you to want to relook at your withholding. And there is this tool, I put that little website there. There actually is a calculator on the IRS website. If you're trying to get really close to, I don't want to have a huge tax bill and I don't want to get a huge refund. If that's your goal and you use this tax withholding estimator, it can get you pretty close to what you should be having taken out of your paycheck every time you get paid. And so I would encourage you to go to the website. You will have to enter some information. They do ask a lot of questions, but if you have your most current pay statement, that could be really helpful if that is something that you want to consider. So to be able to take more of your pay every month instead of waiting to get that back at the end of the year. So that's my first favorite tip. My second one is updating your 401k contribution. So if you have the opportunity to contribute to a 401k, there are a couple of major benefits here. First, many companies have an employer match program where the employer contributes either 50 cents or dollar for every dollar you contribute up to a certain amount. That's free money. And secondly, your traditional 401k contributions are not taxed at the time that you make the contribution. So this means what you elect to put in your 401k is not taxed. And so you will be paying that tax when you withdraw the funds in retirement. And so increasing your 401k contributions means keeping more of your paycheck. So let's say this year you made $40,000 and you contributed $2,000 of your salary into your company-sponsored 401k. Instead of owing taxes on the full $40,000 of your income for that year, you're only taxed on $38,000 because you contributed $2,000 to your 401k. So let's say you're in the 25% tax bracket. That little adjustment saves you about $500 in federal taxes. So you get the benefit of that $2,000 contribution to your 401k, but effectively it only costs you $1,500. So definitely something to think about. If you're not currently contributing, if you have the opportunity, if you're not contributing up to the max of a matching contribution, you're leaving free money on the table. So consider that as a strategy. Okay, my third tip is, this is probably one of my favorite ones, is if you are using cash back on a credit card, the best way to use them depends, of course, on your spending and your overall financial situation. So whether you're working towards paying off debt, you want to invest money, or you just would like some extra cash to spend or to augment your budget because you're paying more for those essentials, using cash rewards it's just an easy way to maximize your income. You're not going to get a 1099 for what you earn in your cash rewards like you would when you put money in your savings account and you earn a little bit of interest. And by regularly redeeming your cash rewards and depositing it into an interest-bearing account, you're going to be earning compound interest. And since cashback rewards don't earn interest while they're sitting with the credit card company, cash them out regularly so you can start earning interest on that money right away. And then my last tip is, when we talk about the money from cash, for example, if you have a cash rewards program, consider opening an online savings account. I have seen rates, I checked this morning, as high as 3.6%. And of course, as the feds increase the interest rate, it gets more expensive to borrow money, but they also pay us more in our savings accounts. And most of these online savings accounts, they don't have minimum fees, or they don't have minimum balance requirements, and they don't have fees to have the account open. And if you go to bankrate.com, it's a great place to start researching what's available out there in terms of money market accounts or just regular online savings accounts, certificates of deposit. There's all different types of ways to save, but effectively, it could be about 300 times more interest in a regular savings account. I looked at a regular savings account with my credit union, paying me 0.01%, which is pretty much nothing. So consider that. And guess what? You can have more than one online savings account with the same bank, or you can have it with different banks. So what I've done is I've named these accounts for different goals that I have for trying to stay in my loves and my needs and what those goals are that I have today. So I'd like you to do this today. This is my challenge. So ways to maximize your income. So remember, think about checking on your paycheck withholding, whether it's for you, your spouse, your partner, and see if there's a way to get more money coming into your paycheck every month instead of waiting for that refund at the end of the year. And then take an opportunity to research and identify the best savings account based on your goals. We're talking about short-term savings. You want that money available to you. You want it liquid, for example, for emergency savings. You don't want to have that tied up into a long-term investment, or maybe you're saving for something that you want to happen next year. So think about the different types of savings available to you. Consider online, because they are paying so much more than just your regular brick and mortar bank. And then thinking about mindful spending. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you need it, or did you just want it? Okay. I want to talk about now about prioritizing your goals, because inflation or no inflation, it doesn't matter what environment we're in with the economy, prioritizing your savings will always be important. It's a great habit to be thinking about these things. So I want to start this this last thought with launching the second poll. If you would do that. And so I wrote these questions before the Powerball. So yesterday somebody won over $2 billion. So I was being conservative here. Let's just think about, maybe this is more realistic than winning the Powerball. But let's say you just received an unexpected windfall of $10,000. What would be your favorite option for how to use it? Would it be a dream vacation? Would it be to pay down some debt or pay off debt? Would you want to give to an organization, to somebody? Would you want to invest and save, or none of the above? Maybe you have other ideas or other goals that you'd want to do with that money. I know for me, it would be helping my mom buy a house. Okay, so it looks like a majority of you would want to invest it or save it, which is awesome. And there's some of you that had other thoughts about what you'd like to do. And so what we're leaning into here is just to be thinking about how to prioritize your financial goals. And why should we prioritize them? Because we have hundreds of choices that we have to make every day about how we spend and allocate our money. So why not be intentional about it? So let's say you had that $10,000, you would have so many choices. I only put a few on here in the poll. Is it going on a dream vacation? Is it putting more money in your retirement? Do you want to upgrade your kitchen? The point is, what is most important to you? How will that $10,000 or whatever amount it is, how will that benefit you financially? And so being intentional about how you allocate your money, maybe thinking about living in the needs and the loves, can help you figure out your larger financial picture and develop this roadmap, this money roadmap about where you want to go. So if you sit down, well, how do you prioritize goals? Where do I begin? Write them down. It sounds simple, but it's a really important exercise to just write down all of your goals. Think about all the things that you'd like to do with your money. And you're probably going to create a much larger list than maybe you initially would think about. Do it. It's worth it. It's worth taking the time to dream and to think about every goal. And studies have shown that just by writing down your thoughts, your goals, you're 42% more likely to achieve it. And you're even double that if you actually tell somebody about it. You say, this is my goal, and you share. So make a list of all your goals. Even if you're the type of person that maybe spends most of your time kind of, winging it, you still have goals. You may not realize it. So write down all of your money goals, big, small, make them real, be specific, not like I want to be rich, be specific and write it down. And if you are with a partner and a spouse, have them write theirs as well and see where you meet. What are each other's dreams? This can be a really exciting conversation to think about. This is what we want to do with our money, and this is the direction that we want to go in. And that's going to drive you to make those day-to-day decisions about spending, about saving. And it's a really important exercise to go through. So really, this is about what matters to you. Personal finance, we always say in our team, we talk about this all the time. Personal finance is so personal. Whatever your goals are, I would encourage you to prioritize them based on how important they are to you. What do you care about? Your core values. And just keep in mind that as you rank your goals, it doesn't mean that you won't reach the ones that maybe are on the bottom of your list. While some of your goals are going to require your full attention, others can be worked towards simultaneously. For an example, if home ownership is one of your goals, and it's a priority, you might be comfortable extending that timeline of how much money you want to save for a down payment. If you're saving up, for example, to get married next year, or you're going to go back to school, or you want to go on that dream vacation. So just thinking about that, some of these things can happen at the same time. Whatever it is, they can be working simultaneously. And again, it's up to you. It's what you care about. And this thing can be fluid. Life happens, things change, you can reevaluate that. But I think it's important to recognize for yourself what is most important to you. And so now we need to make it realistic. So if you've written down your goals, you've prioritized, you've ranked them, now we have to allocate our money. This is where it gets real. And we have to do this savings goals check. Like I said, I want to do this, this, and that. What does that mean dollar-wise? And is this really, is it realistic based on the income that I have? And that way you're not setting yourself up for a failure and you're saying, okay, these are realistic, I can do this. Maybe you have to give yourself a little bit more time to achieve that goal, but I think it's just important to have those goals written down. So I'm just going to show you an example of a very basic, how do I prioritize my savings? So let's say you're looking at all your bills, you know what your essentials are, you know what your income is, what you're taking, and there's $600 of discretionary spending that you have to decide how you want to allocate. And so you look at your list of how you prioritize your goals, and paying extra on your debt was more important than saving for emergency. Maybe you already have an emergency, and then you want to add more to your 401k, you want to be able to travel, and so all those things. And so you're taking that $600 and you're giving each of your priority goals an actual dollar amount. And then you would just implement that, whether you do a budget or not. If all you do is save, you pay your bills and all you do is save, then you're no longer living paycheck to paycheck, and you're working towards your goals, whatever your dreams are. So again, you might have to adjust this. There might be some months that we have to scale back, or maybe some months when we can scale things up. Maybe you're going to get that tax refund this spring, and maybe you look at your goals and you say, okay, maybe I can jumpstart something or throw some money at one thing or another. And so really, it's important that we block out some time to do this. So again, I would like to challenge you to think about, how can you prioritize your own financial goals? Write them down. I remember when I first got married, that was one of the things my husband asked me to write out a dream sheet. And I thought, actually, in all honesty, I thought it was kind of cheesy, but as we started to have the discussion and write things down, it got really exciting. And we had short-term goals, we had long-term goals, and it's something that we look at. And throughout the years of our marriage, it's just been really exciting to see how we've achieved those goals, how things changed. I think it's really a great way to communicate. And then I also challenge you to create named savings accounts for goals. So why should you name your savings account? Well, how does that help you save more money? So naming your savings accounts triggers something called the salience bias. And that just means that we respond to concrete images in a much stronger way. So when you gave a savings account a specific name that's concrete, like buy a home in 2024, you'll be reminded of that goal every time you look at that account, you see money, you're transferring money in there, or you're tempted to steal from it. It's going to help you. You're going to be much more likely to stick to your savings plan and rate it for something else. It's harder to rate your savings when you're reminded by looking at the name of the account that, that's money coming out of my down payment for the house that I want to buy in 2024. It's a small change, but it's a small change that can make a big difference. And then automate your savings. You take that one step of between you and being able to save if you just automate it and have a set amount that's automatically going. You can't spend money that's not sitting in your checking account, right? And even if it's small amounts, if you're automating it, you can start with your employer, you can split your paycheck and you can have it immediately going into different savings accounts, or you can have it come into your checking and then split it that way, whatever works best for you. And so I challenge you to think about these three things. So in summary, we're talking about how can we strategize how we spend? And we talked about practicing mindful spending and trying to live more in the loves and the needs. And a lot of people avoid thinking about the loves because sometimes it feels like it's too expensive, like I can never get there. But really thinking about trying to stay in the loves and the needs is going to be more mindful spending and helping you work towards whatever your financial goals are. And then secondly, I shared with you some of my favorite tips to maximize your income, such as checking your paycheck withholding, utilizing those tax-free cash rewards if you have a credit card that gives you cash rewards, and then thinking about putting that money or wherever your savings are, thinking about if you don't already have an online savings account, consider that to maximize your income. And then lastly, we talked about the importance of prioritizing your financial goals, writing them down, ranking them, seeing if they're realistic. And then it's going to be your why. Writing down your financial goals is your why. It's your guiding force as we work so hard for our money, and let's be intentional and really maximize all of our hard-earned money and putting it towards those things that really bring us joy. So I want to share with you some free resources that we have. We teach free webinars weekly. And if you go to our website at finance.usu.edu/EFW, you'll see all of our upcoming, we're starting to do some in-person events. We do weekly webinars, and we have a really fun one coming up. I encourage you to check it out on December 1st at 1 o'clock. It's a live panel discussion with the entire Empowering Financial Wellness team, and we're going to talk about some tips to help women survive holiday spending. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope that you'll join us there. And if you go to our website, it'll give you instructions on how to register for that via Eventbrite. So we'd love to see you there. And then we've got a great resource for inflation. It was newly developed by Utah State University. If you go to inflation.usu.edu, it's a great one-stop shop. It has a lot of ideas, tips, has a sample of one of our webinars on how to help with inflation and just how everything is just much more expensive. There's a lot of great free downloadable resources, including a cutting expenses guidebook. So I encourage you to go to this website and check it out. And then come join us on social media. I am one of the contributing editors. All of the team contributes to Utah Money Moms. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So follow the conversation. We'd love for you to join us. UtahMoneyMoms.com has a lot of great free downloadable resources. So we encourage you to check it out and learn some real life money smarts. And we're all women here that, Utah Money Moms, this is what we talk about. This is what we love. So check us out at Utah Money Moms. I want to thank you for being with me today. We'd love to always hear some feedback about what you're learning and what you plan to do as a result of what we talked about today. And we would love it so much and appreciate it if you would scan this QR code and fill out a very quick survey. It's just going to ask you a few questions. And if you do that, you'll be entered into a drawing, and we're giving away some pretty cool swag. So we would really appreciate it if you could just take a minute to complete that for us. So that concludes my presentation for today. Were there any questions that came up while I was presenting today?
Yes, thank you so much, Vincenza, for that presentation. So many great tips. Myself, I've been thinking about my saving accounts and how I don't necessarily name them specifically. And so I think I get into that trap of I can never touch them, but we build savings so we can use it in purposeful ways. So that was a really great tip. The first question from our participants that I wanted to ask you was about the housing market, actually. So a participant was saying she's single and is, with the price trends in Utah and now increasing interest rates, she's feeling locked out of ever owning a home, even though she's been saving for some time. So do you have any tips or strategies about how participants can plan to fulfill this goal?
I think stay the course. The economy always goes in cycles. And I think the fact that she's created this habit of saving money and just being patient and, staying the course, because home ownership is something that's the American dream, right? Everybody would love to own a home, and long-term, it can be a great asset that we can build, but there's nothing wrong with being patient and renting for a little bit longer if you can, because we want to make sure that we can afford that mortgage payment. We don't want to buy a home when we don't have any money, because home ownership comes with this whole plethora of other expenses that come up. So I think continue maybe rethinking where or what you're buying. That's what I had to do. I had to go into a different area, so being flexible about sometimes we have to tweak. And, if it's your first home, chances are it's not your forever home, and it's your step, it's your first step. And then from there, we can move on to other things that maybe are more closely aligned with what our dreams are. So don't be afraid to keep pursuing that dream and keep saving that money.
Excellent. Thank you. Angie's going to ask the next question.
Okay, Vincenza, we've had several questions come in about taxes. So one common question women are asking is whether it's better to owe taxes or to overpay a little bit and receive a refund. Many people are under the impression that we have practiced, and that a common practice and theme is that it's best to have a large refund. So if that's not a good thing, can you explain why?
Again, personal finance is personal, right? Some people like the fact of somebody else is taking the thinking of having to save that money, right? They're taking that away from us, and we just like to have that refund check We count on that every year because perhaps we don't have the discipline of saving that on our own. I personally don't like to give the government a tax-free loan and then they're giving that money back to me and I'm not getting any interest for that because I have goals and I have things that I want to do with that money. Now, I don't want to get a large tax bill and I don't want to get a large tax refund personally. And that's why I use that calculator to try to get as close as I can. I'd rather write a small check than receive a big refund simply for the fact that I want to maximize that income that I'm getting every single month. So again, it's personal. And it's not uncommon that people just like that because oftentimes they're afraid they're going to owe taxes, right? They don't want to be in that position where, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this large tax bill. But again, use that tool that we talked about that IRS.gov has, that withholding calculator, and that will help you get pretty close. And I think it's more important than ever because of the fact that they revamped that to try to make it more simple for people to figure out what's the right amount that they need to have withheld from their taxes.
So someone followed that up with a quick comment that said in some states, tax refunds are actually considered taxable income the following year. So that's
wow, right. Yeah, that's another reason, right? Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. We pay enough taxes, right?
Yeah, we don't want to pay tax on the money that's
double tax, right? Yeah, double tax.
So right. I guess it sounds like you're recommending that if you decide to not have the refund, you just need to be careful with your money and make sure you have enough set aside to cover it.
Right, and if
that you owe.
Right, and especially if you use that calculator and you try to get, and you can compare to like, okay, what did I have withheld last year? What can I do to tweak that? Because it was X amount, and so maybe I have a little bit less taken out. And you would go to your HR, your payroll. Sometimes it's a form you fill online. Sometimes they'll give you the paper form, and it can be changed at any time throughout the year. So as your situation changes, don't think you're stuck with, oh, that's what I told my employer, and it's not set in stone.
Right.
It's flexible, so you can always change that. Yeah.
All right, I'll ask the next question. I thought this was interesting because when we have an expert with us on financing, it's always nice to hear, like, what are the tools that you have used for budgeting, or that, through your experience, what are some tools out there that really do seem to help people with reducing debt and building up savings and so forth?
Okay, so in terms of budgeting tools, I started using an app years ago just to help me with that visual of seeing where my money is going. I still do old school and I do a budget worksheet. That's a very simple one. I like to see both of them. So if you are comfortable with using apps, it takes a lot of the, a lot of it is automated, and I really find that time, it's helpful with my time, doesn't consume as much of my time. And I've just built this habit. In terms of paying down debt, Utah State University Extension has a fabulous free debt reduction tool called PowerPay. You can find that at powerpay.org. We do teach webinars about how to use that tool, and basically it shows you, it gives you a debt elimination plan of how to pay your debts off that will save you the most money and the most time without having to come up with any extra payments. And so I would encourage you to go to powerpay.org. I used that when I was myself getting out of debt. I did that in tandem with having a budget. I'd never had a budget in most of my adult life. And then when I found myself drowning in debt, that was a tool that was introduced to me before I was really even working in finance, before I became a financial counselor. And then here I am working for Utah State University Extension, the very organization that developed it. But that was key. And again, creating that intentionality about where every extra dollar was going to go. And for me, it was going towards that budget. And then with savings, really automation, and then naming the accounts. I've been saving for a car for the last 4 years, and I named it car replacement fund, and just seeing that amount every month, and it's automated. So I don't have to think about it. And I've set my budget to make sure all the essentials are taken care of. And when things come up, guess what? That's not the priority right now. we have to move that money to do something else. But I can tell you that's really been successful for me is automating my savings and naming the accounts. It's just that visual, that salience bias of where it's a concrete thing, and it's been very helpful. And it just removes that barrier. Because for some people, just having to make that step of moving that money from checking to savings and doing that transfer, oops, I forgot, or this other thing came up, right? So I just feel like it sets you up more for success.
Are there specific apps that you know are quite useful? I mean, I've heard of You Need a Budget that many people use.
Why you
Are
need a
there
budget?
others? Yeah.
Yeah, there are lots. If you Google like highly rated budgeting apps, YNAB will come up, Every Dollar, Mint. There are so many out there. I'm personally familiar with YNAB and Mint because I've played around with them. Mint is totally free, which is why I like it. YNAB, there is a monthly subscription, although all of these paid apps will always usually give you a free trial to see if you like it, and then you can decide if you want. And then if you're a full-time student, or I should say if you're a student, you can get YNAB for free for 1 year. So if that's something that, because they're all they have their little nuances, they're a little bit different, and some apps just resonate more with some people than others. And there's always going to be a learning curve and a different style. And so it's finding that one that makes the most sense to you and works for you. Some people love Mint, other people dislike it. You know, even talking amongst colleagues and associates, and we just have different opinions because, you know, we're all different, right. Different things work. So I encourage you to try different ones to see
and I
what
bet
resonates.
there are YouTube videos out there that kind of showcase the different features. So
they
you wouldn't
do.
necessarily have to invest your own time. You could go out and poke around and see some
especially
tours.
YNAB. I know they're well known for putting tutorials out there to kind of take you through how to work through different sections.
Great, excellent tips.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's keep talking a little bit about savings since you introduced that. We have a few questions about that. So a few of the questions talk about which online banking institutions would you recommend? Some people feel a little leery or nervous about online institutions. And a second ask about that is whether there are limitations for withdrawing funds in online savings accounts, because we want to make sure that we have access to the funds we're setting aside in our rainy day accounts.
Sure. So the number one most important thing when you're banking is making sure that it's federally insured, FDIC, that protects your money up to $250,000 per account. So making sure you're dealing with a reputable institution. And I don't have any particular recommendations, but I do have a great resource that I mentioned. If you go to bankrate.com, it's just an objective website that just shows you what's going on in the marketplace, which credit unions. If you're more of you just like to go in the bank and you're more comfortable with that, I would encourage you to look at a credit union versus just one of those big brick and mortar, big name banks, as typically credit unions pay a little bit better than a regular bank. And then just going online and reading the fine print, looking at if there are minimum, typically the ones that I've seen, there are no minimum balance requirements, right? No fees associated with just keeping the account. I'm all about that. I don't have any accounts where I pay fees, or I don't even have to keep $5 if I don't want to. And so just making sure when you do open an online savings account, reading the fine print to see if there are limitations as to how many transactions you can make throughout the month. Most of them are straightforward, but do your research and just make sure you understand before you put your money into. And most of them are just going to be tied to your regular checking account. You just make those regular transfers to that savings. It's done automatically.
Thank you. And I just want to make a plug for the free version of Every Dollar. That's another one that you can pay for a version of a budgeting tool, but it's also free. And someone in the chat recommended Alliant as a banking institution. So
It looks like we have Susan. She's joined us. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Susan.
Hey, good to see the panelists and good to, I hated to miss, but Kylie's been texting me and said things have been going so well. So good to say hello to everybody. But I won't give any questions because I'm not in the loop.
Well, I've got the next question. So one participant mentioned they're in a dual working household, and so they often have to try to balance their working time and then caring for their family time. So they do spend money on food services or house cleaning and so forth. And they wanted to ask your take on how these kinds of things fall into the like, love, want, need categories, and how you kind of balance time versus money.
Yeah, and that becomes increasingly important. I think as we get a little bit older and our time becomes so valuable that if we can, if that's what helps us be our best and do our best, then, and you can afford it, it becomes a need because that's how you keep the household. I think as women, we feel guilty sometimes about, spending the money to do those things that help us, be the best that we can be with our family and with our careers. I know I've been hesitant to do that, being a full-time mom and working full-time. I'd love to have some help, but I noticed that I also struggle a little bit with that. But yet I have family members saying, why don't you just do it? It'll help you be a better mom, be a better spouse, focus more on the things that perhaps are more important to you than keeping a perfectly clean home or cooking every night, or finding what works for you. And again, personal finance is personal, and those likes, wants, needs, do I like it, love it, want it, need it, it's going to be different for everybody, right? Because it's based on your core values and what is important to you. There's nothing wrong with wanting, liking, it's just being mindful about that. And so however you categorize that, what works for you is always best.
Can I just plug in real quick? So I was on with my third child bed rest from 26 weeks to the end, and my mother-in-law paid for a housekeeper. And I remember after I had my daughter, Stacy, I was like going through some postpartum depression. I remember one day crying and to my husband, I'm like, the only thing I really love is my housekeeper. and my husband and I decided at that point that that we were just going to have a housekeeper for the rest, and that just makes me happy, and I think that's worth it for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and of course, you have to make sure if that becomes a need, then there might need to be some other things that are wants or likes that shift down and out of the picture.
Sure.
But you get, I loved your message about making this personal and that it's going to vary from person to person.
Sure.
That you get to make those decisions.
Right. Absolutely.
So we have another question, and I'm glad Susan's here for this one because I think she'll have some input and insight in this as well. We have a few people who are thinking about going back to school, and this can be a really common decision and choice during recession. People tend to go back to school a little bit more. But one of our listeners in particular is a single mom who has a goal of getting a doctorate degree and wants to know about the wiseness and the timing of that decision to pursue and invest in higher education when the market is the way it is and with the way it's looking, it might stay for a little while. So what do you recommend for prioritizing investing in higher education at this time? What makes it worth it or not worth it? How do we make those decisions?
Is Susan going to address? Yes.
I think both of you will have good insight on this. So.
Oh, many of you listening in probably know can memorize what I have said if you've listened to me before. But man, the decision for higher education is just so important. And oftentimes in Utah, we're pushed to make a decision only on economic reasoning. And like, will I get the bang for the buck if I, as a woman, especially if I stay at home with kids or whatever, but education is different than a lot of things, because it is about economic. It is having that job to fall back on, as we say sometimes if we're not working. It's all about those. But it's also about our influence. It's about our confidence. It's about leadership skills. It's about those things that may be applicable definitely applicable in the workplace, but also could be applicable in our families and in our communities and in our churches and so forth. So I'm a big proponent of, whether you're spiritual, religious or not, to listen to a higher power, listen to your heart, whatever it is, listen to the universe, to just figure out, is this the right time? I have to say that I did my doctorate when I had 4 little kids, and it was the right time. And I see now, as I look back, that was the right time. So I'm pushing us to think, when we have that education thing, to think, yes, it's important for money, to think about that, but education is such an investment in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts, head, heart, and hands, that I just give that a little bit of a pass on some other things. So that would be my 2 cents. I would say go for it.
I agree. Go for it. Invest in yourself. You'll
So
never
even living
regret.
paycheck to paycheck, your recommendation is still push forward.
I always think there's an opportunity to just evaluate your priorities, and really scrutinize your spending. I was working with a client that's struggling, single mom, wasn't getting any help from the dad, struggling to keep the lights on, pay the rent. And we went through all of her spending, and she didn't realize that stopping at the gas station and picking up snacks and treats after school every day she was spending $500 a month. Right. And it's these little things that, not there's anything wrong with that, but when you're looking at, she's living paycheck to paycheck, it just created this awareness and this mindfulness of, well, I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I won't be doing it as often. Most of us don't really track, right, where our money, to the dollar. And so that was an aha moment for her, an opportunity to say, okay, now I just found $500 is a big deal to her. Right. And so I would just encourage you, and remember, it'll be temporary, because what you're building, for your future is astronomical. And so maybe take that opportunity to just really look at, we didn't talk about all the ways you can increase your income, but there's just, where there's a will, there's a way, really. And if you already have that, you want to get that higher education, follow it, do it. Don't put barriers, make excuses, just like, don't limit yourself.
And there are organizations like the Live Your Dream Foundation that help with scholarships for single moms. So if that's your situation and you're in that, they specifically help you forward your education regardless of which degree you're working on or certificate program.
And I would also just say, oftentimes, that side job or whatever, more and more women in the state of Utah are doing that, and have ways to earn money in different ways with flexibility. And we are partnering with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity right now on the Inspire Utah campaign. And one of the things we're trying to do is get women to start 1,000 new women-owned businesses in the state. And the Women's Business Centers of Utah and SPDCs, others are just phenomenal at finding resources to help women start small businesses, just them as an own employee, or bigger businesses as well. So just putting that on the back of our minds to think about.
All right, well, we are going to wrap up. I'd like to thank Vincenza so much for being our presenter today and giving us many great tips and ideas about how to minimize our spending and maximize our income. I think one of the things that I'd like to close with is just this notion of being more mindful about how we approach our finances. We'd like to thank our sponsors again, the Utah Education Network, the John M. Huntsman School of Business, USU Extension, and Empowering Financial Wellness through USU Extension, for making this event possible. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.